Welcome to Bloody Good Horror, covering the best and worst of the horror genre since Halloween 2007. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello everybody and welcome to another exciting episode of Bloody Good Horror. My name is Eric and I'll be your host for this evening, where we will be discussing Fear Inc. And for those who recommended it to us... That
stands for Incorporated, Eric. Incorporated.
For those who recommended it to us, Mr. Joe has some words for you. I'm the host
I believe his name's Cody.
I'm the host of Bloody Good Horror. Joining me tonight, first up, he's the web developer at bloodygoodhorror.com and the editor-in-chief. His name is Mark.
The man with the plan, sorta.
You know what? Still can't boss me around, Mark. I do what I want.
I don't know if that's true.
Next up on the show, he drinks beer. He lives in Chicago. His name is Joe.
I am ready for the airing of grievances.
Yes. Let's grease that pole.
Got a lot of problems with you people.
Next up on the show, coming to you from Indiana, host of the Instamatic, his name is Casey.
Hello.
And finally tonight, the business-ass business manager at bloodygoodhorror.com, coming to you from a fancy-as-F building, which we can talk about here in a minute, from Manhattan, New York City. His name is John Schnars.
Hey guys.
The most important thing we could potentially cover tonight is the fact that we all are now following Schnars' doorman on Instagram.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
More importantly, he's following us.
Brother takes some sick photos. Let me tell you that. Sick. Also, there's like a mural on the wall in like the lobby of Schnars'. Like this placid mural of like geese and like a landscape that they're in. It's very
and actual ducks outside.
I believe there is ducks. That's
Yeah.
It's interesting.
There's
like
ducks.
This season they're back, but they weren't here last year. It's like they're not here every year. It's weird.
I imagine there's nothing more disgusting.
Would you
than
say that it's duck season, John?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, now there's a fucking 3 inches of ice on the ground season, but otherwise.
So now it's wabbit season now.
I imagine there's almost nothing more disgusting than a city duck.
Pigeons, I think, would be worse.
I was going to say, there's way, way worse things.
Yeah. There were ducks that used to live in Florida in the puddles at the gym, and like when there were puddles, they just lived in the puddles, and I'm like, in the parking lot, it wasn't cool.
That's the saddest duck I've ever heard of.
Yeah.
No, they were mean.
Puddle ducks.
Scary.
Gym puddle ducks.
So, big doings this weekend. All 5 of us, descended on New York City to talk business.
We reuned.
Yeah.
I believe it's the verb.
First time in we think 7 years. It's hard to tell because we all have terrible memories, but we think.
Well, we also get really drunk when we're together, and then we forget things.
Yeah, I think it was 2010. I think it was
Correction, John.
2010.
We all get drunk. John gets blackout drunk.
Yes.
Yeah, once again, as I was saying last week in the show, Schnars at one point just gets aggressively drunk.
Yeah.
There was not a time where I was fully blacked out. Let's just put it that way.
Although it was really funny because Mark was talking about how drunk John was, and then Mark walked away, and Joe was like, "Yeah, after we put John to bed, we pretty much had to put Mark to bed right after that." And by we, Joe means him. Just one person.
Well, I would like to point out that after hours and hours and hours of being out, Joe and I went to a bar, and he ordered a pitcher of the darkest beer I've ever seen in my entire life, which was an aggressive play. I thought he was being optimistic, and it turns out that he was right.
I was in for the long haul.
So,
I went out and got pizza after I tucked you little kids in.
It was a lot of fun. We met up. We did. Joe and I got in. Joe and I and Mark got in Friday night.
Yeah.
I went to bed because what are you, insane?
I was gonna say when you say got in, you landed at like 11. I think you were at the hotel by like
it was
midnight.
pretty late. It was ridiculous. My flight got delayed. They had to de-ice my plane, which I've never experienced before. That's kind of weird. Like, it was snowing. I've never taken off in snow before. That felt like something humans should not be allowed to do. So yeah, Mark and Joe on the first night. Then the next day we did some brunch at the Schnars', a lovely place. very lovely.
Yeah.
You know, we keep a home. What do you want from us?
The Mrs. Schnars, got to see hers first time in a while, so that was pretty nice too.
One of our Instagram followers pointed out how irresponsible it was for you to have paper towels on your stove.
Yeah.
No, that side was turned off. I'm with you, John.
To be
You know.
fair, I don't ever put anything flammable on my stove
Were
because
they?
I'm
I don't think they were on this.
because
They
I'm-
were, yeah. We
yeah.
have
we have
image evidence,
picture
but
evidence, 'cause
if the burner isn't on, I think you're totally fine.
I'm really stupid and I'm really good at like turning on the wrong burner or like leaving a burner on, so I don't even tempt fate.
I will say John cooked the most evenly cooked bacon I've ever seen cooked in
It
a
was-
pan before.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, pan frying bacon it's easy.
Other
but-
exciting things: Casey rode the subway and made it to
did.
Schnars' apartment. He only missed like one. He had like one little miscue, but he was pretty much on time. It's pretty impressive.
I almost,
Casey
I almost
legitimately
wound up in Coney Island, but you know,
Casey legitimately had planes, trains, and automobiles over the weekend.
Yeah,
I did.
He did it all.
and I didn't even tell you guys. We got to see Central. We got to see Times Square because when Casey and I went to bed early on Saturday night, the cab driver drove through there.
Oh,
So we
I'm
got to-
glad.
We got
Wow.
John was so opposed to letting Casey see it. I'm
Yeah.
glad you got to.
John was like, "Oh,
It was one of those things where I was like, there's no amount of convincing that will get me to go to Times Square on a Saturday.
so
I even got to see his Emperor's Palace too.
Oh, there you go.
so we did
Lucky you.
we did some brunching, and then we went to the hotel. We did business for a couple hours, handful of
Like
hours.
three. I
there
would
was
say,
a-
plus the three.
There was a PowerPoint. There was a deck. So to
I
We
just
speak.
want to
Business
point
the
out
shit
your
out of that.
phrasing. You just said that we did business. for
did- we
We
did-
did
we did-
business. We got
Yeah.
we got busy with each other
We
for
did
3
the
hours.
shit out of business. And that
We
was
took
really
the
good.
business all the way. We
This
went all
is-
the way.
Last year, Mark and I and John met up and did a little bit of this, but it was more extensive this year, and it was like planning
So
for.
expensive. There was 2 more people.
Well, no, I mean, but having everybody together just allowed to, I think a little more broadly about what we're doing right now and what we can improve. We definitely had a lot of ideas on Patreon stuff we want to roll out, but it's kind of all like early stage right now, so we gotta sort of gather our bearings.
We
and-
gotta do the post meetings.
But
now,
you'd be amazed
you know?
like how much easier it is when you actually just meet in person, because it's literally now it's impossible. It's almost impossible for us to find 90 minutes to just do the show every week. So the idea that we got like 4 straight hours of business and 2 hours of sober business, I would say. And then like it got a little silly, but still pretty productive. So
Also, we had like 2 garbage cans full of ice and beer that John was like standing by, slapping our hands if we got near them, as dangling a carrot in front of our face.
Yeah.
Pay attention.
so then we went out to a bar that I don't remember the name of, Draft 55. Is that what it was?
Draft 55.
Yeah. There you
And we hung out so that was the meetup that we sent out to everybody. We were there for like maybe 45 minutes without anybody showing up, and we're like, well, this was a huge bust. And then an amazing, incredible, angelic fan showed
Like a
up.
beacon in the night.
Yeah, it was amazing. And I have her name later because everybody sent an email so we can like get into specific meetup experiences later. But yeah, we had 3 fans show up and an unwitting boyfriend who had no idea why he was there, or let's call him
Wow.
man friend.
Let's not use the word boyfriend.
say man
Yeah, I
friend.
think that was a friend.
Let's go guy who drives her to the mall to buy presents for her real boyfriend.
Oh, come
All
on
right,
now.
Joe. Okay, Joe.
And I
So-
say that only because I've been that guy. I'm not, by no means am I poking fun at him.
Listen, we can get into
I
this.
know that role.
We can get into those specific things later. Maybe not that specific thing.
I don't know that we have to get
But
that
no,
specific
it was
about
it was
I think we
really.
should.
I think it was really incredible. It was a very nice, like, positive experience. It was
Also,
really-
I think, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like 3 people is an insane number for 5 p.m. On a Saturday in the
Hey, we'll
the
take it.
abi-
Well,
in the
you're-
abyss of New York City.
you're also missing my buddy Mike from college, who does actually listen to the show, but probably more came because I told him he should.
yes,
so that
Schnars.
we had no one.
Yes, Schnars. You did ignore our fans and hang out with your college buddy the entire
Oh,
time.
come on.
Oh, yeah.
I,
Complete cold
listen,
shoulder.
stop it.
I believe
Joe.
there was a head nod to the second one that showed up,
Oh, hey,
and
it's
then
not-
like
Uh,
a slight eye turn for the third.
All right.
No,
All right.
I mean, it was
Joe.
actually
Thank you.
this really quaint thing because like
Ta-
I think
To
that we
John's
were.
credit, we outnumbered the people that showed up, so it was pretty easy for
Yeah,
to,
we were
to
able to like
disappear
double
in
team
that group.
everybody, but it was nice. Like I think we were very like flattered and taken aback that people took their time out to come out and see us. And
Absolutely.
in the same breath, like everyone there expressed like, yeah, I can't believe I did this, but I was like, I don't know, I'm free. Like I might as well. So it was like this thing where we're like, I can't believe we're talking to each other right now. It
Yeah.
was really adorable.
There was
So
this unspoken bond that
yeah,
we all thought this might end in murder, but we were gonna go ahead and try and do it
no,
anyways.
it was
I think
really
And
we
then
spoke it.
once
I think some people spoke it.
it was really great. We can talk a little bit more about that later because I have some emails from everybody but with their experiences. Then we did dinner and just like abused our bodies a little more, and then Casey and I went to bed. So
Yeah. I went to bed well satisfied and happy with myself.
so we shared two beds. So Casey and I got back to the room, and I'm like, you know what? I'll take one, and you take one, and then they can just pick their poison when they get back.
Yeah.
If you guys had
Ah.
slept in the same bed, that would've-
Oh,
man.
good.
Should we,
I
should
just
we
remember
yeah.
something like 1 o'clock in the morning, maybe 12:30, sitting up in bed, and Joe and Mark were both standing there at the foot of the bed saying, "It's just us." And I just fell back over. And then at one point,
yeah.
I woke up in the middle of the night and saw Joe's ass hanging out the side of the bed, looking
Joe
at
and
us.
I were trying to
so
do
hot in
some
this room.
we're trying to do some body math and figure out who was gonna take one bed.
No,
Mark was so we got back to the room and I had to go out and get some contact solution and I wanted to find a slice of pizza somewhere. And Mark was like just borderline like blackout, like could barely speak. And he's like, "Do you want me to come with you?" I'm like, "No, absolutely not. One, why would we have come back to the hotel?"
yeah,
Just
I-
wanted to show you the room, Mark. Now let's go.
yeah.
Listen, I thought that was a very nice offer, and I
Oh no, absolutely. It totally was. It was very funny at the time.
I wanted you to feel safe out in the city all by yourself.
Yeah.
I think you're
Uh,
confused, Mark. I'm taking you out behind the woodshed here. That's what's happening.
We forgot to mention probably the most important highlight of the weekend, and that is I got to go to the Pony for a couple beers.
There you go.
At 11 a.m.
Yeah.
Well, it was noon. They
Sort of.
they don't open till noon.
Yeah, sort
yeah.
of.
Tears were shed.
Take your judgment somewhere else, Eric.
It was 11 a.m.
Here's-
11 a.m. Central where Joe is from, so
That's
his
right,
body
yeah.
thought it was 11.
Tears
But-
were shed by Joe, and tears were shed by the lady who went down to the bathroom after Joe.
I don't know if we need to give all the details.
It's like when you're chopping onions, but the onions are covered in shit.
John makes this. You can explain it, John, but this coffee that's like pretty much just like rocket fuel.
It's just cold brew, but it's home brew.
And I was hitting it pretty hard.
Mhm.
Colon blow. Yeah, I mean, you got to be real careful with cold brew because especially if you leave it a long time, it's super concentrated.
Well, yeah, we,
I mean, we
cut it.
were-
I mean, it's not just you're not
We
just
were
drinking.
making fun of Joe for how much coffee he drank, but I think that was kind of the secret to his
Yeah, it was-
longevity.
it was-
that
Oh,
he
yeah.
mainlined about 3 gallons of cold brew coffee before he tackled our day.
I got back to the room at I think like 2 a.m. or so, and I still had trouble falling asleep.
I'm just awake now. This is just how I am forever.
Oh, good times.
Joe, speaking of your liver,
Yes, sir.
what are we drinking tonight while we review this movie?
Yeah, so we're reviewing Fear Inc.
Yes.
About a lovely couple who I don't even know where to begin to explain this, but
They're just a couple. They're definitely a couple.
they're a couple just doing couple things at spooky Halloween time. Lindsay and Joe is the couple, and my name's Joe, and I got excited that guy's name was Joe. So I picked a beer from Founders Brewing Company, and this is Pale Joe. Woo-hoo. Pale Joe is a pale ale, but it's interesting because they actually put coffee in the brewing process, which you don't really see a ton with for like an IPA or like a pale ale. So it really has this nice mix of like that sort of roasted coffee flavor, but also with a little bit of the hops bite to it. It's even hard to like explain like what this beer tastes like because like I said, you don't get a ton of these out there. But it does mix really well. It sounds like a weird combination, but it's super good, as most of Founders beers are. Comes in at just about 5.4% alcohol, so not like super high. But so you can crack 8 or 9 of these if you want, and then drive the kids to school. Founders Brewing Company based out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, but they distribute pretty far. I mean, I'm sure most of our listeners in the U.S. have seen their stuff in your local store. But everything they put out is just great. So I wholeheartedly suggest this one and anything else you can get your hands on. Foundersbrewing.com is their website, and I think that'll do it.
Thanks for that, Joe.
Thank you.
Did you drink anything new this weekend?
Yeah, I had a few new beers. I mean, most of that stuff that John brought to the hotel I had not had before, with the exception of a couple. And I tried, just because we're back in the area and like I haven't been in New York in a few years, I tried to hit some of the breweries that are like Greenpoint. We had a few of theirs up at the Pony. I was super excited to see their stuff. They put out awesome beers. I was very happy. Yeah.
Do you want to talk about how you called in a favor at the bar, at the Pony?
Well, it was my wife and I have known the owner for a long time because we used to go to the one down on 45th and 10th, and then like the first bar that he owned. So we've been friendly with him for a while. He's actually married to a girl from Glenville, or Scotia, sorry, like the town over from us. So when like they closed the one on 45th and 10th, we texted back and forth just about how much of a bummer it was. But then when I was up there, I just said we're in town. I had to stop by and at least have one. So we were just texting, and he like called the bartender and ordered in a beer for us. Just an awesome guy. And the Pony Bar in New York, I can't say enough good things. Makes
my
me so
hometown
happy.
spot.
That's
Joe, were
great.
you not
Nice.
impressed how close it was to my apartment?
Oh, I was telling Leslie just about like the apartment and like the location, all that stuff, and like just the cost of rent in that area. And I'm like, but you're like a block away from the Pony, so kind of evens out.
Yeah, I mean, we could get you a nice box probably down like on the other side of the
Yeah.
street. It's like the Pony's just a couple steps away at that point. So, yeah.
And, I will say like their beers are probably the most reasonably priced in the city. Like, what is it, $6 for a pint?
It's 7 usually.
Is it 7 now? Ah.
Yeah. At happy hour it's 5. They do happy hour only for an hour though, from 4:20 to
Yeah.
5:20. So
I
I remember
mean,
when they first opened, it was only $5 for a beer.
that's not
Yeah.
bad. I mean, for New York City, that's pretty good for anywhere.
Yeah,
$6
that's
a
still
beer,
not
that's
bad.
like average. I guess.
I mean, they're 7 and like they're big to Joe's point, and they're also like hefty,
Yeah, they're good
craft
beers.
beer. You still get drunk for $25. Like, don't worry about it. So,
I wasn't.
As we saw, John.
Mark and I were at the back of the pack when we first walked up to the Pony, and you guys tried to go in the side door. And I saw it was locked, and Mark and I thought for sure Joe was going to break down in tears.
the terror in my eyes when that door didn't open.
yeah.
Well,
That's
Huh?
not a door. That's just a door painted on some brick, Joe. Go around the
I
corner.
was shocked there were other patrons there when we arrived. Like that there was,
Oh.
and of course it was like people with kids, which
And it
that's-
was like 20 after. No, Leslie and I have definitely like rope dropped the other one.
I mean, kids have to drink at 11 a.m. too, John.
Yeah.
fair point.
Is that pretty common in New York bars?
My neighborhood,
What's that,
yes.
kids?
Most neighborhoods not.
Kids.
So
Yeah.
Well, they serve food. Like I've been to a lot of places that were like bar and grills during the day, and then just bars at night.
there's also like known kid-friendly bar. Like the Pony's like fairly kid-friendly because of the shape of those tables.
Yeah.
Like there's a ton of other bars in the neighborhood that I would not take my kids into. So it's also like at the Pony you're not going to see any like super aggressive drunk people like at least during a reasonable hour, whereas like during the day you might see that at some of the other bars. So
See, in Indiana, we have like bar and grills like that, but like the family side is separate.
Yeah, right. The
Like
bars.
a separate room on one side and the bars on the other.
The bars
there's
like a
not many
wing.
places with space for that in
Right.
New York.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We're just mingling with the
I
drunks.
feel like in Chicago, like even the most like disgusting, like broken down bar, there's still like 2 high chairs sitting in the corner.
Yeah. Nah,
Alright.
You never know when a baby's going to show up, Joe.
It's true. That is true.
Oh,
Thank you for that,
Should
Joe.
we move on or?
Thank you for that, Joe. That's the beer recommendation, something you get every week here on the show from Mr. Joe.
Thank you.
Now let's take a quick break so that we can review Fear Inc.
This is it, Jennifer. Your big break in TV. From the prime time, bitch. Main feature.
John Schnars,
Mr. Eric.
you didn't make much of a case this weekend for not being fancy. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
we hung out with your doorman for a while. He seemed cool. And then, you know,
Can we get him on the show? How do we?
eh. He
Look at that happen.
he.
Come on now.
Then you had a PowerPoint presentation with like a bunch of numbers and
I
like
mean, it was Google Sheets. It was a free software product, but yeah.
whatever. It was a
It was
presentation.
a solid deck.
Yeah, it was a great deck. Joe's
Yeah.
multimedia degree was proud.
Yeah.
Nice. There we go.
You want me
It's
to put
really
that
what I
into,
aim
like-
for.
Like
I
some sort
would've-
of CD-ROM. I'm totally up, John.
If you
I
would
was
have
talking about John's fanciness, I would have fast forwarded straight to John having a very in-depth conversation about how wine pairs with the dinner that we were having, and doing some sniffing, doing some.
Guys,
sniffing
Yeah.
you didn't
over
even
the
even talk about the waiter and the fact that he may or may not have been in like what was it? What was the movie? Did we remember the
He
title?
was in some low budget horror movie like 10 years ago, and we were like looking it
Okay.
up on
It wasn't
IMDb.
10 years ago, it was 5 years ago, and it was the same name as another movie that I looked up that was like 15 years ago. And he just gave me this look like, you really think that I would be in a movie that was
Yeah.
15
Well,
years
because
ago?
the other one you looked up like had legitimate actors in it.
Yeah, and this one did not.
I have to
He
give
also
him
looked exactly like Billy Joel Armstrong from
Yes.
Green Day.
I have to give him credit for like dealing with us because we were like pretty belligerent at that point.
Was it The Sky Has
We were being
Fallen?
nice, like
We-
we weren't
no,
like
We
assholes.
were
were-
being super nice,
were
and also
totally-
it was a table of 5 at that restaurant, which was not super cheap. So
We were
Yeah,
totally.
I'm pretty sure he made out okay.
We don't
I think the movie. I think the movie was called The Sky Has Fallen. I just looked in the history of my phone.
listen. We were totally
Nice.
being nice, but I guarantee you, we were not nearly as funny as we thought we were being.
Oh, I don't know if that's true.
We're
I'm
never
sure we
that
were
funny.
hilarious.
Disagree. I am always hilarious. If
Yeah.
not
I don't know.
funny, then I think
John and the chocolate cake at the end was pretty funny.
Oh, dear Lord.
Literally, we're like all ready to vomit, and he comes over and he's like, "You guys want dessert or anything?" And we literally everyone else was like, "No, no, no." And Sean was like, leans back and he's like, "Yeah, man." He's like, "Bring it on."
No, it was not that coherent. It was like, yeah, dessert.
And then after it was on there and it was on a little pedestal stand, and I remember right at the very end, it was just like,
Yeah. Guys,
I
it's
just-
not dinner if you don't have dessert. All right, come on.
There was still like
Words to live
2/3 of the cake left, and like John just like takes the entire thing. I'm like, oh, so we're done sharing this?
We're
Is that
done
what just
here.
happened?
Yeah.
Just takes one slice off and takes the rest away.
All right, John.
Uh,
The point I was
sorry,
trying
guys.
to make is
We're a
that
lot of fun.
the point I was trying to make is that you fancy, and that's why every week here in the show you bring us the word of the day.
Eric, today I'm going to roll the dice with a word that Joe will remind me if I've covered in the past, but I think we're going to be good here. The word is hoax. Hoax. A hoax is a humorous or malicious deception. It can also be used as a verb, which would just mean to deceive with a hoax, which is always a little weird to me when they use the word in a definition for that word. So yeah, it's the reason I'm pretty sure we haven't done this is like I went to look up the origin, and it actually just says that it comes from the word hocus, and it's a likely abbreviation of the word hocus, which I mean I think we're all familiar with hocus pocus. Apparently, in the 17th century, it kind of evolved from hocus pocus, or was shortened at a point to mean trickery or deception. Hocus. Yeah, so hocus beget hoax. Mhm.
There you go.
Sired.
Yes,
Sired hoax.
yes, it's sired. Words,
from his loins.
they sire things.
Cool. Nice work, Snars.
Mhm.
I'll take it. That's right.
All right, very good.
What is this movie about? Besides Los Angeles people, which is something that I will discuss in depth when
Oh,
it's my
boy.
turn.
Well, I mean, you probably could have guessed I was very excited because the movie has the words "Inc." in the title, which indicates to me that it will be about business, and that I will. It's not really about business. So Fear Inc. I mean, indie horror version of the game, which is a David Fincher film from like 95, 97, something like that, if I had to guess, maybe earlier. In fact, that movie is even referenced in this movie at a couple points, like directly by name. So you have the main character, Joe Foster. He's living pretty high on the hog with his girlfriend, Lindsay. Lindsay is
don't-
of wealthy.
I don't think you
Huh?
can be sure what they're doing in their private time, John. It's a little
Well-
presumptive, I think.
Lindsay is she is of wealthy parentage, and she works. She has a job, but Joe is unemployed, and he's just kind of like hanging about when we meet him. He's like smoking some marijuana.
It's just a loser horror fan.
Yeah, he's like hanging out in their pool. This like house that they live in has a sauna in the house. And it's kind of like next tier rich people house. So yeah, they're living together, living in sin, as you do. He doesn't have a job. He's kind of just hanging out, and we kind of meet him, and we learn pretty quickly, or slowly, depending on your thoughts, but that he is really into horror. He's really into just being scared, and he like takes her on a date to a horror haunted house rather. It's like kind of weird. It's like I don't think it's around Halloween, or maybe it is. Did they say?
I thought the events all take place on Halloween.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right. Then
It's like a
less
few
weird.
days before, like a couple days, yeah.
Yeah, it's less weird that there's a haunted house. I thought they were like just like, it's date night. Like, let's drive to a haunted house. And
I think that's why the friend and his wife was there.
because of Halloween. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Because it was like his favorite holiday. All right. That makes a little more sense. In any event, they go to this haunted house. Joe is kind of like running around being like, I'm not scared. I'm not scared. And like kind of like pointing out the scares and just generally being annoying. And at the end, he bumps into a guy who we had actually seen in like an opening sort of opening sequence to the film. In the opening sequence, we see a woman running through a parking garage being chased by a dude with an axe. She bumps into this guy who's dressed like a cop, like a security guard for the parking garage, and it's Patrick Renna, I believe is his name, from The Sandlot, most notably.
Lisa
Great
Rinna's,
Gambito.
Yeah, a film from 20 plus years ago. But he's still around, and he's in this movie, and so
I think this movie confirmed that he's still around.
yeah. So Joe bumps into him, and we kind of see him again, and he hands Joe a card, and he says like, "Oh, you thought this wasn't scary? Like, you should call Fear Inc. Like that's what they do. They create custom scares." And so then we fast forward a little bit.
You should be their pitch guy, John.
Yeah, Fear Inc. Yeah, so two of Joe's friends, Ben and Ashley, come to visit them. They live, outside of Los Angeles somewhere, or like in the greater Los Angeles area, up in the hills, and they come to visit. They like are in from Maryland, I believe they say, and like we're just like on vacation without the kids, and they're kind of just having this like double date. And during this, like Joe gets pretty drunk, and they're like doing all kinds of drugs and kind of just generally goofing around. And at some point, he decides like, oh, I gotta call these Fear Inc. people. Like, he had been talking to Ben. Ben was like trying to talk him out of it, saying, "Oh, I know someone who did it, and like these guys don't mess around. Like they're crazy." And so of course Joe immediately goes and calls them. But when he calls them, they say, "Oh, sorry, we're already all booked up. Like we can't work with you." And that he kind of thinks that's the end of it. Flash forward one day essentially, and like spooky shit starts happening, and pretty quickly it ramps up to people in the house stalking and attacking them, and just general craziness, including their neighbor, who I think is Richard Ryle. Does that sound right?
Sure.
Richard. Well, he's like an actor that people.
He's the jump to conclusions guy.
Yeah, the jump to conclusions, Matt. Yeah.
Yes, you're right.
Simkowski. So he gets killed. In general, there's just like chaos ensues. And yeah, there's at that point we're probably like halfway, or maybe even a little more than halfway through the film, and the rest of the movie is them kind of like trying to defend themselves, but then like also trying to figure out like what's real and what's not. And the whole time Joe is like super kind of blasé, like, oh, this is so funny, these guys they're really trying to scare us, and like it kind of devolves into the point where he realizes like they're actually really potentially being attacked. So I think we don't want to get too spoily.
I think that's good for now. I think we're definitely going to spoil it later because we got some stuff to talk about. But
Oh yeah.
Joe,
Yes, sir.
what do you think?
So when we went into this, I had heard nothing about this movie. I think we kind of talked about it before. It was suggested by a bunch of folks, but No, I didn't really know what I was getting into. I think on the surface, the concept is kind of cool. It's just the execution is super predictable. This Joe character that John has mentioned a bunch of times, he's not even remotely likable, which, you know, I kind of get as the point, but like, I think they go too far where he's like unlikable and you hate seeing his face and you don't like him when he's on screen. Like to the point where like I didn't enjoy the movie because of him for a lot of parts. But I think like sort of the predictability of it all kind of ruined this for me. And just like the story in general wasn't very well written. So overall, I was not a big fan.
Casey.
No, sir, didn't like it. Yeah, no, exactly what Joe said. This thing was pretty vanilla, super predictable. If you are a even moderate horror fan that's watched a lot of stuff from the 80s and whatnot, you knew exactly what was going on in this movie. Most of the characters were fairly likable, but like Joe said, the lead character who was the lead in Raising Hope that was on Fox for a while. Too bad they didn't get his dad on that show, which was Garrett Dillahunt, because that dude is an awesome villain. Last House on the Left, if you remember that remake. Yeah, that's definitely more exciting than this movie to talk about Garrett Dillahunt. So that's my feelings.
I've never heard of this show, Raising Hope. Like I'm not. It's like
I don't think I
you
have
could have
either.
just made that show up.
It also had Martha Plimpton from the Goonies in it.
Oh.
She's on that new show now. Where she
Yes,
finds out her
the
son's
Real
gay.
O'Neills.
Yeah, it's really good. She's good.
Great. Let's talk about network TV more, you guys. Hey,
You ever seen Fresh Off the Boat? I like that show a lot too.
I actually do like that show. Mark, what do you think about this movie?
God.
Well, you see, they're fresh off the boat. Yeah, I didn't like this movie at all. I think we're having a discussion about it. I think that if you look at this seems to me like a movie that we would have rented sight unseen in like 2004 and probably thought it was like kind of funny and kind of clever. The like horror parody send up like referential humor sort of thing has been done so much, and this movie, like, I guess we'll talk about it because there's twist after twist at the end, and if you look at those twists, like, I guess the kind of hackiness of it makes sense, but in the moment there's so much of like, well, because you're such a big horror fan, and he's like, well, I'm a huge horror fan, and that's, like, if you wanted to have a drinking game with this movie, anytime they said the words Fear Inc. or horror fan, take a drink and you would actually probably die by the end of this movie. But it's like, there's some light chuckles. I wouldn't even call them full laughs. It's just like, this movie is supposed to be clever and it's supposed to be a comedy, and it doesn't really succeed very well at either of those things. And it's also not scary, so you can't. It's like, it's just, oh man,
John.
Yeah.
this movie's, CC gave it like a 6 on the site. I would say that was being very generous.
Yeah, these
No,
guys.
wait,
The writer,
I'm getting in touch with her.
the writer and director, are both worked for Funny or Die. So I'm actually like, that surprises me. Although
so
not
this
really.
was like,
Well, here's the
did
thing.
they work for the funny side or the die side?
Well, no, listen, because at first I was like, oh, it's really surprising that this movie is not nearly as funny as they intended it to be. And then I'm like, actually, like 98% of the shit that's on Funny or Die is not funny. And then there's just the one thing that goes viral. But then if you ever go on that site, the rest of it is not good.
Will
So-
Ferrell talking to that little kid that wants his rent money. Ever since then, it's
Right.
been all downhill.
I
Right.
think that was the first video on Funny or Die ever.
Holds up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I typically in these situations I go one of two. Well, I would say typically I would try to play the like, well, if you thought about it this way, and like my instinct actually is to like see if I can say that I hated this more.
Yeah,
than
I
the
was about
rest.
to say.
Like,
Well, if you look at it this way, it's actually much worse than
Oh,
what you guys.
man.
John,
Yeah, I think, yeah, Eric.
tell me what you thought.
No, I hated
Tell
it.
me what you think about.
I think Mark was sort of getting to the point of like, it wants to be funny. I mean, it's listed on IMDb as like a comedy horror. It doesn't do the horror or the comedy well, and it's just like that's so wholly unacceptable, and especially in a world where like there's actually a lot of pretty good horror comedies, or there's like some really memorable ones over the last couple of years. um I think the referential stuff is also can get like you're like playing with fire to a certain extent, because like if you do it well, okay, great, and like tip of the cap, but like in this case it's mostly just name dropping, and
Yeah.
then some like very specific sequences
It's
that they're like kind of doing shot for shot,
it's
or like trying to.
it's name dropping too, and like I hate to be that guy as I push up my glasses, but like it's name dropping in what feels like a very um disingenuous way. Like we always say, man, like when somebody is doing something like this and they have a real appreciation for it, like you feel it. It's really easy, and I don't know. It's really
Yeah.
presumptuous of me to just say this guy doesn't like horror movies, but if he does, he's not the same kind of horror fan that like he's not speaking to me in a language that I'm picking up. Do you know what I mean? Like
Well, yeah.
it feels like an outsider's language, if you know what I'm
It's,
saying.
I mean, that's where like if you, it's not fair to like compare this to like super great movies, but like when you look at something like Cabin in the Woods, which actually does like a shitload of horror references, like that's like a lot of what that movie's about. But
Yeah.
there's like a good way to do it, and then like a not great way, and then like I mean, the other thing is like the references here are largely to like pretty, I would say common stuff. Like at some point we can discuss the fact that like the central kill, or like one of the like big set piece kills, is from Game of Thrones, which is just like a weird. It's like a,
Yeah.
what are those movies, the like Meet the Spartans movies, where it's like referencing something that's so recent in pop culture that it's like, why are you
Well, it's a
using that
bit.
as your like touchstone?
It's a bit, and it doesn't really make. It's funny because I mentioned that I actually sort of enjoyed that part, but I enjoyed it separate from this movie. Like I just enjoyed that it was a thing that exists. But it
Yeah.
is funny that they were so like surface level with all the horror reference stuff, and instead of going deeper into the horror stuff, they go, you know what, fuck it, people like Game of Thrones, so
Yeah.
they just like jumped into like
Yeah.
wrote
Well,
like, a
Like
Game
they've seen like Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th, and like that's it. And they're like, well, Game of Thrones, there's blood there.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll go with that.
Yeah, like a real horror fan saying they're, because this sequence that kind of tees this up is the foursome, the two couples are in this hot tub, and they're talking about, or the two guys at least are talking about their like favorite kill sequences in horror movies, and the main guy is literally like, well, my favorite sequence is from Game of Thrones. And it's just like, it's the type of thing that a real horror fan would never say in that
Well,
conversation.
and these other people who are giving him shit for being such a big horror fan are also giving him shit for picking a TV show and not a movie, and not a horror TV show for his
Yeah.
It's
favorite.
very much like what drives me insane in like they do it a lot in like horror movies where they have like the metal guy, but to like make him the metal guy, it's like, here's a Metallica t-shirt. Now you like metal.
Yeah,
like
and I
it,
think-
it feels like that.
I think it's important to say too, like, I mean, I myself, like, I don't necessarily have like a really steep bar for that. You know what I mean? Like, because I also hate the opposite end of that, of people who like, you know, refuse to watch The Big Bang Theory because they're insane, or you know, like they think it's
Yeah.
like some slur against nerds or something. Like, to me,
I just think The Big Bang Theory is not funny.
that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah,
I
I'm
get
with
it.
Mark.
I get it. But my point is like, it's not a very
It had
high
its
bar.
moments.
It's not a very high bar, but it's like really indicative of this larger problem this movie has. And like, you guys are totally dead on. This movie is not good. You know, and it's like, of the multitude of problems it has, like not being funny enough, not being scary enough, there's this underlying thing that I like to describe as like, this is like a Los Angeles movie. Like I checked out these guys' IMDb's, and they've done a lot of shorts, and like they've worked on other movies, and
Cutting deep.
and I think like they probably got a little money together to make this movie, but they had to make like sort of like figure out the locations. And guess what? Like I guarantee you, this was just some dude's house that they knew, so they could get in the house.
Yeah.
So,
It's
in
probably
other
the
words,
producers.
Big ass
but
TV.
my
up in
problem with
that house.
movies like this is like nothing about Los Angeles is relatable to literally anybody. Like I would argue that probably people who live in Los Angeles don't want to watch fucking movies about Los Angeles because they probably hate it. So like,
Well, yeah.
the people, they're LA people. They're like her parents are rich. They're hanging out. They're hanging out in this LA mansion. He's like a very specific kind of like slacker LA douche kind of character. And they throw in this other couple with kids, and I guess maybe like they're supposed to be relatable, but they're not. you know why? Because they live in LA. So it's like, this is a really, I realize like I'm taking a deep dive on this movie here, but like you guys are totally right on every other point, and I just feel like it's this deeper thing where they've made a wholly unrelatable movie, and it starts at that level, and it works its way up to the fact that the main character is an asshole, and like
He's just he's intolerable.
and if you're
There's
pushing
no
this,
part of him that's
and if you're
redeeming.
pushing this towards horror fans, like I don't see the appreciation for it. You know what I mean? It's more like you know, it's just not handled very well. All that said, like the movie, like everybody else seemed a little worked up about this movie over email. Like John seemed real mad. Joe seemed a little worked up. I actually kind of like once I was in it, I'm like, all right, I want to see where this goes. Like just out of morbid curiosity, I was doing kind of some other things while I was finishing it up, but like, you know, it has a few mildly charming moments.
Eric, I cannot believe you are the one who's going on the defense here. This is amazing.
This is still new Eric. Like this is still very like.
Especially this week because I have like I'm still physically recovering from this weekend, and so I've been real cranky all week. So yeah, it's even more impressive than you know, John.
Daylight savings was a bad time to pick to go on this this weekend bender that we did.
Yeah, it was
that was rough.
Yes.
It's funny. I didn't think of it until Eric started talking about this him being like the LA douche. And Marco will be the only one who gets this reference, but this guy could totally be a waiter on Vanderpump Rules.
Yeah, like he's got his little.
I do get that reference.
Like he's like 2 steps away from a man bun. Like he's got his little weird half ponytail thing, and it's like,
yeah, it was pretty much like an inch away from being.
I mean, that stuff sounds superficial, but like it goes a long way. Like your characters have to be relatable.
Yeah.
No, Eric, you're right. So like my problem with him had very little. I know where you're coming from on the LA thing. I feel like it's aggressive. Well, it's definitely aggressive to paint all LA films. Like this just didn't have anything to say about LA. Like a film like The Invitation is also like an LA film that actually like ends up being like really compellingly about sort of like LA as like a cultural.
Exactly. The specific kind of movie I'm talking about is this, where it was shot really cheap, and so it was just they shot in LA out of necessity, but nothing about the movie has anything to do with being in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So then you're just like looking around like this is a weird place. Like
exactly. Like I was confused why it was so warm out when it was fucking Halloween.
October.
Yeah, and you're dead on about a movie like The Invitation, where like literally half the point of the movie is about its LA-ness and how that influences the characters in it. Like it's
just the way they interact with each other.
But even that, it's literally a film about like rejecting the vapidness of life out there and turning to some like insane cult, but like you know, like feeling anyway. So it just drives me nuts.
Didn't understand what like I was supposed like. I don't understand how you write this character and don't think that people are absolutely going to be revolted by him. And he's literally drives the entire film. Like they hang. Yeah. They hang the entire film.
Also,
on him.
they dropped some weird reference. They dropped some weird reference in the beginning. Like I thought, trying to humanize him about how he had lived with his friend when he was a kid for an amount of time. Yeah. But then I was like,
"That's true, yeah."
But I was confused. Did they ever come back to that?
No, they didn't.
I
forgot all about that. But
yeah, I forgot they mentioned it.
It seemed very important.
I slept on a couch once.
It's the whole thing.
I mean, just like you.
One time I had to live in a house without a hot tub, you guys. It was horrible.
Or a sauna.
And honestly, the more we talk about it, and you realize that his girlfriend's the one that's rich, and he's there, and they're talking about how he, they're showing that he doesn't do anything but smoke weed, get drunk all day, and all that stuff. It was like he was filming. It was pretty much like Happy Gilmore without Adam Sandler.
Yeah. No, well, and that's where like. They spend so much time setting him up as this like character, and it like doesn't ever offer any payoff because his arc is essentially going from like, very dislikable like stoner layabout to like scared stoner layabout. Like that the arc is that he's like not scared and then he's
still dislikable.
I really like the phrase layabout, John. That's a nice old timey phrase. Yeah. You're one of them long haired layabouts, aren't you?
I mean, I've been waiting for a place to deploy layabout. No, I mean there's very little about this script that coheres. That's like really what it comes down to. The actors, like I thought the main actor, like Casey, if he was like the main actor on a network television show that lasted like more than one season, that is shocking to me.
I was on
The-
for a few seasons. I'm not saying
Which
he was
guy?
good in it. I'm just saying he was.
Which guy?
The
The
main
lead guy.
Really? The friend
Yeah.
was in Freddy vs. Jason. That's my
Yeah,
contribution.
he's also in The Girl Next Door, which I have a very soft spot for, even though that's a
Oh,
Well, that's what
yeah?
so
I
like
do
when
love
I
that
said,
movie, John. I'm
Yeah,
with you on
he
that.
had like a brief like teen movie phase.
right. So like when I said this movie has like a mid 2000s feel, I think part of it was him because he was in all these movies. He was also in Fanboys and Just Friends, which are like also
But also like
Yeah.
he's like
from that.
he looks like an adult now, and it's kind of weird. There's like a weird uncanny because I feel like I want
Yeah,
him to be the
Eric,
same age.
he looks like an adult because he's probably like 35 years
Well,
old.
I know, but it's weird. Is all I'm saying.
Nah, he was 84, so he's 33. So
He's
you know,
84. Holy shit!
yeah,
He's 84 years old. That's incredible.
yeah.
Oh, he was also in Night of the Living Deb.
I saw
But-
that. I'm not
Did
proud
you?
of that.
What you
Uh,
did?
In Freddy vs. Jason, he had a crush on Kelly Rowland
Oh yeah, that was him.
Yep.
Didn't we
Yeah.
all?
of Destiny's Child fame. John.
All right, there you go.
Having Destiny's Child's child.
So this movie, do we want to get into like
I would like
how
to talk
it
about.
actually
I would like to talk about
works?
all three twists, please.
Yes,
I mean,
please.
So at some
Why
point in
do
the
you guys
movie,
suplex
at
this?
some point in the movie, he's murdered multiple people. Like he thinks he's murdered. Spoiler alert. He thinks he's murdered his best friend
There's
Who-
there's so many spoilers that
In
it's
a-
hard to
in a
not
s-
step into one.
in a Saw style like scene, like straight up Saw. He had to cut his friend's hand off and then reach into his stomach and pull a key out, which is like the
Relevant,
first
by the way, very very relevant, timely horror reference.
right to Saw 1. And that's the first moment where it turns like he thinks it's a joke like that. The parts previous to this, I sort of enjoyed this part where he thinks it's a joke and everybody else is freaking out until he has to kill his friend, and then the whole movie kind of turns. That's it.
I think it would be I mean I sort of agree and disagree. I agree that the angle that he thinks it's a joke and isn't taking it seriously would be great if they didn't make him such an insufferable douche
Or-
up
Yeah.
until that
Yeah.
point.
If this movie
like
I
was
was like at that point I was just kind of hoping that like someone would actually just kill him and the movie would be about someone else.
if this movie was
Yeah.
made in the style of like Tucker and Dale versus Evil, but like the same kind of misunderstanding thing, that would be funny.
Hey, college kids.
So
Well,
he
even-
thinks he's murdered his
That's
friend, and then sorry, Casey, and then later on in the
Oh.
movie, like he gets attacked by the Sandlot kid. What was his name? What was his nickname in that movie?
The Great Hambino.
Forever.
Okay.
Forever.
And that guy attacks him with a scary horror, quote unquote, scary horror movie mascot. And he looks like, speaking of Game of Thrones, he looks like the Sons of the Harpy. It's totally
Yep.
what he looks
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
but the guy finally
Had some of those in college.
the guy finally flips out and fights back and kills him, the Sandlot kid. And then at that point, his girlfriend gets up, who he thought was dead, and was like, "No, what did you do? What did you do?" And he's calling the cops, and she's like, "Get off the phone," because she reveals that it was all a work, as you might say in wrestling parlance, Mark.
Look at this guy.
Surprise!
Look
Nobody
at this
says
guy.
And so then that leads to this whole thing where now they have a dead body they're trying to get rid of, and so they throw him in a van and they're driving away. There's kind of a cool little scene where they're pulled over by a police officer who then they kind of reveals himself as part of Fear Inc. I like that scene. It's kind of tense.
Yeah.
No, and then
Would.
although I don't understand how he got hit by the car and was fine.
Or
He's a
why?
Professional
Well,
stunt
yeah.
person.
Why did he get hit by the car at like full speed?
The only thing I think is like because he
'Cause they were
screwed up
chasing him.
and said the guy's name,
Right. Yeah.
and
Right.
then like Fearing decided like, all right, well we got to get rid of this guy. But
No,
like
it
I
was-
think,
like
but then as you see the end unfold, it's like, oh no, they're not that clever.
everything
like, that's
about
No.
They're
every-
like a
it was
bush
super
league
simple.
operation.
everything
Because they made it
about
look like the cop was pulling him over, and they knew the bad guys were going to be following him, so they were just taking out the cops, so it didn't screw him up, even though he was part
it's,
of it.
it's another huge fault of this film. Like everything about the whole scenario that they've cooked up.
If
and
this
the,
sounds fucking stupid, it is.
the
I just
well,
want
just
everyone to-
listen,
Yeah.
just wait, okay? Like, but everything about the whole scenario and the idea that they've can convince this guy that it's real involves like such incredible leaps of logic, and it's not even done in a clever way where you go back later and just go like, oh, I see. You're like, what?
Yes, I think it's safe to say that none of us will be rewatching this movie for continuity.
Yeah.
So they go out to the desert. I'm gonna pass to you eventually, Schnars. But they go out to the
Oh,
desert.
God.
They're burying the body. Fear
Toss.
Inc. shows up because they quote must have had a GPS in the van because like no shit, dumbass. Of course they had a GPS in their own van.
I
Then
mean,
he basically
do they?
he throws hoods over their head. So, but now they're upset because it was fake, but now they're mad because he killed one of their people. So they're like trying to act cool, which they're not, and then they throw hoods over their heads, and then they shoot the girlfriend in the head. And then
Not
he-
white
Smoking
pointy hoods,
cigarettes,
just so you
wearing
know.
leather jackets.
totally they were wearing leather jackets, yeah. So then like he wakes up, right, and no one's there. Is that what happens?
Yeah. Well,
Yes,
they
yep.
they like killed the
Girlfriend.
girlfriend.
He wakes
He
up,
doesn't wake up. He like gets the mask off
or
himself.
they just drive away or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he starts wandering down the street. There's a weird music video where they're just like playing some band's random song. Must have been like friends of the director, I'm gonna guess. And like
No one
like,
knows what it's
fake,
like
like
to
fake,
be a sad man.
fake artistic like cuts. It's just that like I can see them using tropes that in a better movie would work, but they're just not. They don't earn it. So when it happens, it's just real cheesy.
Well, can you? Yeah. Oh God, I wanted to say something that related to this moment specifically, but you need to go to the next twist in order to explain.
So if you're counting at
You
home,
can jump ahead, Mark. No one's.
if you're counting at home, that's basically like 1.5, 2 twists. So he starts wandering on the road. He's all in a daze. We get the music video. Then he comes upon like this little diner, and he walks in, and his girlfriend's there. Does that just happen right away?
Yeah.
And like
yeah,
she's
she's like
fine.
sitting
Yeah.
down.
And
She's
she's
like
like,
in the shadows, sitting at the end of the
Oi,
bar.
governor. Wasn't
She's
that
eating the
a
moons over my hammy in the corner.
in her Australian accent. She's like, "Oi, governor, it was a joke." And then
Yeah, so
I don't think
it
they
was-
say governor, don't they?
It was a yoke, and then all the people start to come in. You know,
And they're
all
like super cool and just like clapping, like
they're like
yeah,
so-
did it again.
they're so self-satisfied though. They're just like, yeah. And then it's a really tense thing because he's in an actual believable character turn. He's really mad, and so when like he's looking at these people, you can tell he just wants to murder every single one of them.
Well,
Well,
he's also
and-
just walked like 20 miles through the desert.
right. And
you
so
couldn't have
to-
just revealed this back there before the music video,
Yeah.
so I didn't have to walk this whole way.
One of the things that like I was just so fed up with this. Usually, if a movie is irritating me, that's when I'll start just live emailing you guys my random thoughts. But one of the things that like when the girlfriend is quote unquote killed, and they cut to this like music video montage thing. I mean, it's 100%. It's such a stark tone shift that you kind of know it has to be fake at that point because like
Yeah.
she was one of the main characters and there's no way in hell they would just kill her off and he would wake up and be like totally okay with it. And you know, like, and they're just playing this weird like not tonally appropriate music for whatever is happening. It's
Playing
so strange.
yakety sax.
Yeah.
So
Ugh.
I also felt the same way as Mark. I mean, it was pretty obvious that was going to be a fake at this point. But this movie, at this point, it was quite obvious. These guys watched the original April Fool's Day and said, "Oh, that was great. That blew my mind," and we're going to remake it. And so watching this, saying, "That was freaking April Fool's Day," they get out there, and it's like watching it, even with the subtle hints that Mark had, pointed out. There's no way that this is real. It's happening again.
Which, by the way, April Fool's Day is like actually pretty good and still holds up.
Oh, yeah,
I
it's a
would,
classic.
for sure.
I would contest you can go back to April Fool's Day and have more fun with it than this movie.
But you got to go to the original, not the remake.
Yeah, there was
Well,
a
yeah,
remake. I
come
totally
on.
forgot there was a remake. Did we watch
Didn't
it?
we
Yeah.
do it for the
Did we-
show?
We did.
No.
Yeah, we
that
did.
sounds right.
Yeah, we
sounds
did.
right.
That's the only reason I watched it.
All right. So Schnorrs, give me the third twist.
Well, the
Give
third
it.
twist is while they're at this quote unquote rap party in this fucking dilapidated diner.
That is not
they,
a
like-
party with rappers, by the way.
No. They're like toasting each other. The friends are, and then the Fear Inc. people surround them, and they're like, "You didn't think we'd let you get out of this without your favorite kill sequence," and then they essentially do like the
No,
red wedding.
Right, because all of a sudden, as he says that, the Reigns of Castlemaire start playing like in the background, which is the song on
Right.
Game of Thrones that you hear before a bunch of people die. It's like you hear
Yeah,
it at
like
the Red
tons of
Wedding.
people probably recognize that.
Well, I'm a huge Game of
I
Thrones
have
nerd.
seen
but
every episode of Game of Thrones, and
in-
I did not recognize that song.
In the Red Wedding, right before all the shit goes down, they start to play the song, and that's when Catherine Stark like knows something is bad because she starts looking around, and then that's when all the shit goes down. It's like
Yeah.
it.
Excuse me, it was the same song.
It's used at several points in the show. If you were a true fan, Joe, you would know that.
So,
I'm not a
all
true
right.
fan.
So,
What?
Eric,
That's
what you're
fine.
saying
Eric,
is
you're really not
Fear
helping
Inc. will
with
be
Joe's
enjoyed
impression
by
here.
the people who are like absurd red wedding.
But it's like so anyway. So then
completists.
literally a bunch of them are it's like they're killed kind of the same way. It's like throat cut, like stabby stab, and it's just like
well, and killing the like girlfriend in front of him and then cutting his throat like that.
I
Yeah.
would.
Am I the only one who thought because they were in the diner, why were they doing a Children of the Corn remake?
I would say that like
Hi.
honestly they're kind of like
We have your
betraying.
woman.
They're betraying this film's thinness with the triple twist because to me the fact that you have 3 twists in your movie just says that you realize that you had nothing, so you were just like, well, what if we twist it again?
And also, they're not. I mean, they're the world's. There's only 2 things it could be. It could either be real or not real. So the fact that they do the flip like 3 times, it's like it's not surprising. It's just like, oh, it's
Well,
not the thing that.
But like,
you
let's
know,
talk about the fact that none of their business model makes any sense. Like, how could you possibly get away with murdering somebody for real like that?
I'm
I
glad
know.
that you're the one that brought this up because I didn't want to be
It
the one
didn't
that
make
had to go
any
there.
fucking sense.
It's
Over and over
ludicrous.
again too. Like that's
Yeah.
their entire that's what they do.
So
Yeah.
can you
Yeah.
guys? Can
Like
you guys
someone
forgive
contacts
me?
them and says like, "Hey, I'd like to be scared," and then they murder that person. Like that would be discovered very, very quickly.
And also,
Not
there
one
is,
Yelp
uh,
review.
and also
not
it,
a one.
Ashton
It-
Kutcher
yeah.
jumps in, is like, you just got Fear Inked.
Joe, you're
What's
joking,
funny
but
is,
like that's exactly the point. Nobody is around for word of mouth, so you're relying on the fact that somebody who knew the person is going to say, yeah, they did this thing, and then I don't know what happened because I'm not them, but then they disappeared. And then their friend going, ooh, that
Kate,
sounds fun, and signing up for it.
Like I'll let Casey get in because I could just keep yelling.
Well, I was gonna say, there's a movie direct-to-video 2 or 3 years ago, The Houses That October Built, and it was these people putting on a haunted house who ended up killing the people, and it sounded like it was something they'd done over and over, but they weren't advertising it as a business and trying to make themselves famous from it or whatever. They weren't making a living off of it. They were lure people in, go to other haunted houses, lure them in. So this had a lot of elements of that, but
I think the secret murder circus in 31 made more sense than
Yeah,
dude,
the
it did-
Fear Inked.
You know what?
Thank-
I don't often give Rob Zombie a lot of credit on the show, but I'll give him that.
I think I enjoyed 31 more than I enjoyed this.
I
Oh,
gotta
yeah,
admit,
No,
though,
I see that I disagree with because this was really easy to let. This was easy to let happen to me because it was very like airy. Like there was nothing to it. It was like cotton candy. Like it disappeared as soon as it was gone. Like 31, you endure a Rob Zombie movie, whereas like
70s last forever.
this is just kind of like a silent, smellless fart. It's just like, all right.
I do have to make one admission here though, because the first time when I watched this and the third twist came around, I'm like, oh my god, this is fucking dumb. I can't believe they're doing this. It was ridiculous. It wasn't until this afternoon when Mark explained to me that he actually mentioned the red wedding in the hot tub, which I completely and totally missed. I must have fallen asleep or something, because then once he told me that, it's like, okay, that makes more sense.
Well, yeah, I mean they tease it, but it's still like literally they're just like recreating a scene from a better thing.
It's
And-
just so weird. Well, right, and like I said in the email initially that I kind of enjoyed the reference to it, and now that I think about it, it's just so weird that like that is the reference that you throw your entire movie on. Is like
well,
is like
a movie
gag.
that's about like horror nerds too. That's what drives me crazy.
Right. It's like this. It's like
Yeah.
this gag. It's like this gag in a conversation
Well,
from an hour ago
because-
that if you weren't really paying attention would kind of pass you by, and it's meant, and it's like it's supposed to blow your mind,
But
and really it's just like
it's the
what-
ultimate
why?
it's the ultimate expression of the fact that the film is very surface. Because like yeah, here's just an insanely popular like touchstone thing.
Well, I was saying too, one of the girls, the one who was, and I was trying to, it took me forever to realize what I recognized her from. She played Don Draper's
Yes.
girl on Mad Men, his secretary. But
Huh.
yeah, it was the voice, and I was like, just like trying to dial in on it. But she was talking about like, she was giving him shit because she's like, why wouldn't you pick the bed death scene from Nightmare on Elm Street as your favorite death? And I was just because there's a point where the guy says, like, the main villain guy, I guess, or the head of Fear Inc. is like, we couldn't let you go without you seeing your favorite, or like recreating your favorite death or whatever. And like I kind of forgot whose was whose, and I was like, is there a moment where they're just gonna stuff someone in a bed and blood's gonna shoot out?
Well, that would have been interesting.
That would have been awesome. Yeah, I would have been into that.
Yeah.
You know, death bed, the bed that eats people. So there you go. Man, I had something else. I had a bug. I mean, this movie, Eric is kind of right that this movie is ultimately harmless, but
it's harmless. Yeah, that's the thing.
It's harmless, but it's also like it's kind of harmful in its harmlessness.
Yeah, and like, you know, not to be beat up on the folks who recommended
this movie ruined my childhood. I'm never gonna be able to watch The Sandlot again.
No, but I think I probably had higher expectations than I should have, because typically like stuff that we get recommended and we watch, like something like Autopsy of Jane Doe got recommended a bunch, and like I ended up really liking that movie.
Yeah.
And
I definitely had people tell me this was on top 10 lists, and that blows my mind.
Yeah, we should never listen to the fans. I'm just I'm tossing that out there right now. I wasn't on the Autopsy of Jane Doe episode, but I cannot think of one recommendation that's actually been enjoyable that we've gotten from
Autopsy
people.
of Jane Doe was really good.
Yeah, I'll check that out.
No,
that might be the one exception.
I mean, we make our lists from recommendations, right? It's like, I feel like when, you know, I don't know. It's this time of year when things are quiet in the theater, although they haven't been. But when we're really looking for stuff, I feel like we get burned.
Hey, we could have seen King Kong instead of this.
That's true. It's true.
Yeah.
It's very true. No, there's no way I was going to make it to a theater this weekend.
No, absolutely not.
Not a chance in hell.
I actually almost went, but then I sat in my chair and watched TV.
Yeah.
We should have went after dinner. That would have been really fun.
Oh my god.
I would have thrown.
I would have.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I could not. Yeah, I couldn't sit still. All right, guys. Would you recommend?
I think we can all say it at once, right? No.
No.
1, 2, 3. No.
Yeah, I also think no, even though it's kind of like whatever. I don't. You don't have to watch this. All right, guys. Let's take a quick break and do some fan mail.
Remember those idyllic scenes out of your childhood? Crisp winter nights, sleigh bells, crackling Yule logs? Remember those? Remember them well? After Black Christmas, they'll never be the same again. Black Christmas. If this movie doesn't make your skin crawl, it's on too tight.
Rated R.
Hi, this is Adrienne Barbeau, and you're listening to Bloody Good Horror.
Send your emails to info@bloodygoodhorror.com or hit us up on Twitter at BGHorror with the hashtag AskBGH. And don't forget to pick up back episodes of the show at podcast.bloodygoodhorror.com.
And we are back. We are back in the house.
Yep.
Lots of email this week, guys. You remember email? That's where you HTTP and the at thing and the board. info@bloodygoodhorror.com is the email address. First up, I have to put the picture of all of us from the trip, and also shout out to our waiter. We found him on IMDb. What's his name?
Oh, no, we've moved way past that.
Yeah. I mean, you found him on IMDb. Work your sleuth powers.
I don't know that he wanted us to shout him out. Listen, I think he led on. I've been in a bunch of really shitty stuff. I think was what he said.
Mark,
I remember.
He's an actor. You don't think he wants free publicity?
It's loading. His name is Kerry McLaren.
Listen, hell of an actor. It's fantastic. He pretended like he didn't want to kick us out for like an hour, so that's great.
I think you're making us sound worse than we did.
Listen, I think
we're delightful.
I think you guys underestimate how annoying it is to talk to 5 shit-faced people when they're trying to order dinner.
I got to imagine he's talked to a lot.
Yeah.
To be fair,
it was 4 moderately drunk people and 1 shit-faced guy.
And to be fair, Schnars totally ordered for us like we were his pretty date. So.
Right. I mean, let's give John some credit here. Well, you know, we're giving him all this shit, which let's say is well deserved.
I was going to say
but,
it's all right.
But He also coordinated he ordered for all of us, and I just want to point that out that John ran dinner. So he was in whatever state he was in.
He was like, "Look, please."
I was going to say, quite honestly, the dinner that I had, I will be John's date. I don't care.
Yeah. Listen, the entire
I'll take
weekend,
it.
the entire weekend was amazing. But if I can't break Schnarz's balls, then what is this all about? Okay.
I will say John
Also
took
fair.
Mark and I after that dinner to possibly the whitest, like most middle-aged bar I've ever been to in my life.
Yeah.
Hey
Bills.
guys,
It's good.
There
Wanna
was
go to a-
so many elderly couples on date night from New Jersey at that bar.
you know, it would go great after this riotous dinner. Let's go drink liquor at a piano bar.
Ugh,
Darling, shall we have a cocktail after the
dude,
show?
I was polluted. Casey and I took a cab back, and I was just like, I would like to trade in my body for a new one because this is no good.
This body is no longer a
This,
wonderland.
this is going downhill. All right, first
At the
up.
meantime, while Eric sat in the hotel room telling me how polluted he was, I kept saying, "No, I'm fine. I'm fine. Really, I'm fine." As I fell asleep.
By the
beforehand.
way, I have to mention too. It's just like added hilarity in the hotel room. So there's 4 of us in the hotel room. Joe sleeps with this ridiculous like white noise machine on that sounds like the ocean or something, and then Casey has a CPAP machine. So like literally, it was like I was in an aquarium for like 12 hours. And you know what? I actually slept pretty good, so I'm not hating on it. It was just really funny. Like
I was gonna say it's better than the alternative.
let me put it this way: the room sounded very moist.
You
White noise
actually
machine.
experienced both CPAP and non-CPAP me sleeping, so you know what's better.
Although Joe,
I mean,
Joe,
we didn't need any help passing out / falling asleep, but if we were having trouble falling asleep, I imagine that we would just be vibrated to sleep by all of the
yeah.
things.
And to be fair, Joe, we totally just ordered a noise machine off of Amazon. So
Oh, it's the best. Once you guys use it, you will never like. If I try and fall asleep in a quiet room now, it drives me insane.
well, I think
It's
I
funny.
think we're gonna try to use it for the baby.
That's when the
first.
voices creep in, right, Joe?
Oh yeah, we still
It's
use
hilarious
it. For Mia. She's
because
5 now.
Eric warned me about your white noise machine, and at one point I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was laying there, and I looked over, and I heard that noise. I'm like, oh, that is nice.
It's the best. It's great.
You know, it sounds like a faucet is on or something. So a
Yeah,
little bit.
It's
When I forgot that he had it, and he turned it on as we were going to bed the first night, and I legitimately thought he just left the faucet running.
All right, first up here, Wesley. He says,
Actually,
I just saw the Facebook of you all together in New York and realized that in that pic, Eric looks remarkably like Neil Fallon. He's the singer of one of my favorite bands, Clutch.
oh, clutch, yeah.
While Neil's
yeah.
beard looks a bit more homeless than Eric's, I think there is some resemblance there. Do a Google image search and let me know what you think. As always, I love the show. Keep up the excellent work.
I could see that
Yeah, sort of, I guess.
a little bit.
little
He's
bit.
A tiny bearded man. I guess I see that.
he's done some more harm to his body. I've got to imagine.
I was gonna say you're on far less heroin. So.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Listen, but like
I
gluten
don't
is
think
my
he's on
heroin,
heroin.
Joe. That's all it takes. Next up, Cody, the Code Man. I'm gonna call him
Oh,
that from now
Cody.
on. Sending in some nice positive thoughts. I watched King Kong this week. It was dumb and pointless.
Oh no.
I hated it.
I've heard mixed reviews.
I wish I
also.
had just seen Logan again or watched the Peter Jackson one again and waited for Skull Island at home release. Just awful. I have no idea why it has 80% Rotten Tomatoes. Did all the hardcore critics give it a pass, or did only Salon.com type critics review it? I like that he takes a shot at Salon there. It's great.
Goddamn New York liberals.
Cody, I like that we're really like Cody's a new writer to the show, and I like that we're really starting to form him out a little. You know. Starting
Well,
to
I
get a
think
sense of him.
Cody is the one who recommended Fear Inc. So this is,
Oh.
yeah. you know, hey, yeah, well,
So what's your
See if
deal,
he-
Cody?
we'll see if he writes. We'll see if he writes back in after he hears this episode. We still love you, Cody. Thanks for writing.
Next up, this
If anything, we have short memories.
this is from Allison. Allison holds the very like the distinction she should be proud of. And we will never forget. She was the first one to show up to the Bloody Good Horror meetup.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
Salute.
Resident of New York City, Allison says,
you should have met her, John.
"Nice,
Such a dick.
Joe. That was amazing."
Joe's been holding that in for the last 3 days.
Honestly, no, it just came to me.
I would love everyone to write in again and just review your perceived interaction with John that night, just so we can really get a good feel for it.
Do we get to do that too?
You could probably tweet that and still have about 120 characters.
So anyway, Allison says, nice to meet you all Saturday night. Thanks for hosting and being so open to meeting fans. Please tell Sophie I had a very successful Scream Thirsty Thursday party last year. That is the regular drinking game column that Sophie writes. People
Available at bloodygoodhorror.com if you ever want to go back and pick
people
those up.
still talk about her rules, and let Cece know her stickers are dope. I keep mine on the coveted over the Apple logo spot on my laptop.
Nice.
Most of my close friends just aren't into horror as much as I am, so it's beyond awesome to tune in every week and be a part of your community. Thank you. Keep horror and reality TV alive. I assume that was for Joe.
Huh. Oh yeah, we did. We had a good discussion about
I feel like that's why we all do this, because like we don't necessarily have a ton of people like around us that are into it, so we just started, doing it on the internet.
My dog just doesn't understand.
Next up, Jenna. Jenna was also there Saturday night. She says, Jenna here, the personal trainer you guys met the other night. It was great to meet all of you after listening to the podcast for so many years. Joe, thanks for the band recommendation. Black Table is great.
Oh yeah, awesome.
Is that like a mean Joe band? It's mean.
It's actually some buddies of mine that like they've had a few bands, but they do sort of this blackish metal thing. They're awesome. If anyone's into like metal, scarier type stuff, like Black Table is awesome.
She says, looks like I just missed a couple of shows, but definitely have to see them live. Didn't get a chance to add the other fans on Instagram, so if they're listening, let them know my Instagram tag is Zombie Futon.
Mm-hmm.
It's a futon with zombies. Okay, so this is two things. This gets into what Joe was talking about earlier, this next part, and also Joe talking shit about me that she totally dropped him on an email. It's actually kind of funny. It's funny, and it's like Joe, so whatever, but it's just, here we go. It says, my date, Liam, had no idea who you guys were, but will now start listening to the show. Joe won him over. I was talking to Eric, and Joe just looked over at him and said, oh, I'm just happy he's talking to someone his own height for once.
Oh, Jesus.
You know what? You know what, Joe? I would hate on you for that, but it was nice.
I mean, inaccurate.
You
so.
know? What do you
I don't
think?
even remember saying that, to be honest.
Well, so it's funny you say that,
That's
Joe, because I
fucking
have a thought.
hilarious.
I have a
That's
thought
so
about
good.
not remembering saying things also, but I'll wait for the next email. Anyway, she goes on. Thanks for all the entertainment and fun you've given me over the years. I'm very proud to support you guys on Patreon. I originally started listening to the show to keep up on horror movie news, but you all are so hilarious and all around fun to listen to. That's what keeps me tuned in every week. But still, please don't review Ghost in the Shell. Keep being yourselves, never change. And an apology to John, who I apparently trained to the point of nausea. Your #1 buffest fan, Jenna.
It's true.
She gave Schnars. Did we talk about this in the show that she gave Schnars some personal training?
I may have mentioned it I may have given her a shout out. I can't remember. Yeah,
I do feel like, honestly, we busted your balls all night about it, but I like 75% remember you actually mentioning this.
Yeah,
at
but it
one
was just
point.
we were already drunk, and then she brought it up, and I'm like, we started shouting at Schnars. She's like, you never told
Yeah.
us that, and then we literally broke his balls. I broke his balls until I left that late, like way later.
I mean,
in the
I don't know
night.
that John's ever mentioned
like
it
on
the show,
Sunday,
but
Eric was like texting me breaking my balls about it. It was,
he's 100% told all of us that before.
You know, well, you know, it's hilarious. So me and Joe, I feel like we're the real leaders of the John ball breaking. But then like Joe and I had a moment even before we left the meetup where he looked over and he's like, "Yeah, you know, I'm pretty sure I remember him telling us that, but it's just funny."
But just stick with me here.
Yeah,
We're gonna go.
Oh yeah, for sure.
100%. Yeah, she was really
I mean,
cool.
to be fair, John probably barely remembered any of that, anyways.
Allison was really cool, and then the third person who showed up, Josh, also wrote us in. He said, "Hey, BGH crew, just wanted to say it was so great to meet all of you. Not to mention your incredibly talented New York City fans at Draft 55 last Saturday. I wish I could have stayed longer, but even in the little time I was able to carve out, highlights were plentiful and included hearing firsthand from Eric the sheer majesty that is briefly encountering the legend Ric Flair." So I don't remember telling him that story. It's totally a story I would tell when I was drunk, but I read that and I was like, I just had one. You ever have those weird moments where all of a sudden you start thinking about it and you're like, I actually don't. I don't remember anything.
Mm.
Like, I remember being
You're probably
there.
just looking for something to give me shit about it because I was standing.
To be fair, it's a great story. Like,
and I'm pretty sure we've told it on the show before.
Yeah,
but
it's like number 3 on my list of accomplishments in my life. So, he also says, being drafted by Joe, to please for the love of God not review Ghost in the Shell.
Yep.
That was Joe.
Joe, you were really out in force on this topic.
Something
huh?
I learned this
I
weekend.
mean, he made a
Joe,
T-shirt about it and everything.
Joe really does not want to review Ghost in the Shell, and he was like guilting the fans who showed up into saying, no, we shouldn't do it.
No, I did not guilt. I asked. I said, "Do you guys think we should review this?" And everyone said no.
Joe, but like, what are they gonna be like? You're wrong, Joe. You were like in their faces about it.
Absolutely, you were standing right next to me, so they could have said, "No, you guys should."
What did they think Joe was gonna do if they
It
disagreed?
was listen.
with
It was
him?
very aggressive. Is all I'm gonna say.
It was not aggressive. All the listeners should also write in and tweet if we should or should not watch
Well,
that
listen,
movie.
Yeah,
It's
and
not
actually,
horror.
don't put anything else in your tweet. Just tweet us yes or no. No
No.
hashtags. No
Joe,
anything.
Joe, you
BP
won.
horror on
You
Twitter,
won,
yes or
Joe.
no.
You won, Joe, because you got so intense about it. I don't want to deal with it, so we can just move on.
I am perfectly happy being sick that weekend.
I just don't get it. It looks awesome. Anyway, he
You
said,
can
and then
still go see it.
also he says, getting to pitch the iconic Leprechaun Ice Tea matchup, Lep in the Hood for episode 420. It's just his
Step
memories.
in the hood, up to do no good.
Glad to
I know.
see.
I know all of the rap songs in that movie.
Glad to see on the Instagram that you stopped by Rudy's, my favorite Manhattan dive bar. Look forward to the next meetup whenever y'all make it back here. He then wrote in again to say, P.S. Rewatch the first 15 minutes of Leprechaun, and there's way less Warwick Davis smoking weed than I remembered. Sad face.
There's a scene in the second Leprechaun in the Hood where he impales a dude with a bong and then smokes the bong with the dude's blood. So I think that's
Well,
worthwhile.
you might need to go to that one then. Wait, what
it's so
episode
bad.
number are we on right now?
4 something. I don't know.
Yeah, but is that like next week 420 or?
Oh, I see where you're going with this. I see. Because weed, right?
I'm pretty sure that's where he went with it. You know what's funny? Ghost in the Shell is episode 420 right now. That's what it was penciled in. So, you know, Joe, make your
Wouldn't
case.
that be Kong Skull Island though? If we
Yeah, we could do that for sure.
That's fine with me. That's okay. We could do Evil Bong.
Huh?
It's 416 right now, so or no, this is 417 now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's 3 episodes from now.
We can
So-
watch the Friday the 13th remake where Jason is a weed grower.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's true.
That's it.
So many weed ties, really.
That's it for fan mail. I just want to
Horror
say
fans and weed. Who knew?
I wanted to say thank you to everybody who wrote in this week, but especially the people who met us because we were like all so drunk. We were like, I was like, make sure you write us, so we know who you are because like it was chaotic, but it was a lot of fun.
That was awesome. Those guys were super cool for coming
We
out.
just want faces to go with the police sketches.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you again. info@bloodygoodhorror.com. What's on Twitter?
Tweets.
Okay, cool.
Just generally.
Yeah, just generally. So we've got 2 hashtags. If you're a longtime listener of the show, you'll know we have 2 hashtags we ask people to tweet us with. The first is BGH Classics. So if you are a patron on our Patreon, which is at patreon.com/bloodygoodhorror, and you have access to our entire back catalog, and you're listening and you hear something silly that you think is worth sharing, tweet it with the hashtag BGH Classics and try and fit the episode number in there, and we'll read it. First one and second one are from Drop Your Linen. First one. Eric said, if your cheese is black, send it back, words to live by. And then I said, it sounds racist when you say it. That's episode 350. Unclear what.
I kind of remember that exchange, but I don't remember what it was about.
You know, the best part about most of these that I'm noticing is that they so very rarely have to do with the movie. So the episode number is relevant, but the movie that we're watching is not necessarily relevant. Next one, also from Drop Your Linen. I've got a real problem with old people that look like they smell like farts. I don't even want to look at them.
That's definitely Joe.
That's definitely Joe.
Yep.
Episode 399. I remember that.
That's still 100% true.
But yeah,
makes
it was
me
like
sick.
it was
I'm
like last year, so.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was 16 episodes ago, 17 episodes.
All right. So we also use the hashtag AskBGH if you have a question or just a statement. As it turns out, this week there's only one, and it's not a question; it's a statement. But typically, if you have a question and you want us to answer it, send it to us with the hashtag AskBGH. And I swear we will do our best to answer them. Sometimes we get so many that it's hard to make it through, and some weeks, like this week, we get one, and it's from the dude himself, Spokey Man Dan. Please tell me you're not skipping Kong.
Yeah, I guess we'll try to squeeze it in. I don't know. Well, how many
Yeah, we're
weeks
coming back to
away?
it.
I mean, well, what's this week? Let's discuss.
Yeah, so this week is Belko Experiment.
Cool.
Next week is Life. and then we will have Kong Island.
So can I tell?
It'll probably still be in
posit
theaters.
to Spokeyman Dan that all you have to do to make this an Ask BGH question is throw a question mark on the end of it and say, "Are you guys going to see
There you go.
Kong?" And
That
that
would've
is an Ask BGH question worthy of the word "ask."
You would have been asking. Yeah, I mean, worst case scenario, we'll cover it later in the year when it hits video. But like, we're not going to skip it for the year.
It seems like a fun theater one if we can squeeze it in.
Yeah,
I was
for
like
sure, for
pretty
sure.
bummed we didn't get it in. So
I'm
Lots
sure
of
it'll still be in
thick
theaters.
billboards in the New York City for Kong Skull Island.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That and
Also for
Baby
Boss Baby. Yeah.
Yeah,
Boss Baby, Baby Boss.
that's a thing
The Baby
apparently.
Boss.
I didn't realize it's like a book series or something.
Yeah, it's a book. Well, it's not a series. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's like a sequel, but it's like a fairly famous kids book.
Right.
The Boss Baby, man, you gotta read it. It's
all
really
we
good.
do with books
It's
at
a
this
baby,
point,
but also a boss. We get
John.
it.
All we really do with books at this point is just stick them in our mouths and chew on them. So
Yeah, no, I mean that's fair, but
They're
you know,
delicious.
Eric, you can read them. You know, she won't, but
I'm actually
Um,
reading a book about WCW right now, John. So
just the Eric 2017 fucking
I kind of feel like Eric's
wrestling
trying to
book.
like
I've read
single white
something up.
female me right now.
I've read
Yeah,
three
with
books.
his wrestling fandom.
I've read 3 books in the last like 2 months, John.
Are you gonna start a spin-off podcast that's just about wrestling books? Because that would be a weird,
That would
like,
be
super
sweet,
specific
actually.
podcast to
Yeah.
start.
I would record like once every month and
It's
a half.
just me.
Yeah.
I just talk
Yeah.
about them.
Yeah.
It's
Three
gonna come
times
out,
every
I
6
read,
years.
I read a thing, and it's going to come out quarterly.
I'm not gonna lie. I have thought in the past about doing just shows with just me. Not
Just
for this
Eric.
show, but just doing my own thing.
You
I mean,
love
that-
you love Dan Carlin, or you used to.
Yeah,
so
like I
that-
could.
that
I
doesn't
think I
shock
could.
me.
I think I could do it.
What would that be about?
I have no idea. That's a good.
And how
Stuff
would you fill
Eric
the
says.
time where you're distracted and not paying
Also,
attention?
if you
Listen,
if you
single,
are, if you're
like-
like falling asleep on a show with 4 other people, what the hell are you gonna do when you're all by yourself?
Well, if I'm just talking, I'll be interested.
Oh,
Yeah,
Oh,
do
right.
the whole
Oh,
show.
That makes
I,
sense.
you know what? I'm gonna go on record and say I'd listen to it. I'll listen
Yeah.
to it.
At the
Maybe
very
the whole
least, yeah,
show,
you're like
Eric
the
could, I
ramblings of a madman.
I want to hear the exact moment where Eric goes off the fucking deep end. That's the
Day 10, still no one here.
No, it'd be live video of Eric soliciting suggestion topics from Twitter, and then him just for 45 minutes googling.
There's Eric. There's an ironing board behind you. You could put on that Jason mask and just iron clothes for like
Listen.
an hour.
I have a lot of thoughts, you guys. I don't know if you know this, but
Oh, you don't say.
No, I believe you. I believe you.
you know,
I
people.
don't think
Listen,
that's ever a
listen,
question.
every day, all across the country, single people host radio shows, and they do just fine.
Yeah.
It's fair.
Like unmarried people or just people by
no,
themselves?
like let's be very clear. I am interested in you trying to do this. Like I said, I would listen. So,
The best part is that literally no one could stop you. You're the one who uploads the episodes, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
just sneaks into the feed one day.
Yeah, a
Just call the
Patreon.
Eric Show.
We've reached our upload limit. There were 50 episodes of the Eric Show that popped up overnight.
Dude,
We don't know what happened.
Dude, the Eric Show. I love it. That's perfect.
It's to the point. You know exactly what it's about
It's
when
about
you see the title.
It's about me.
Yeah.
It's going
Oh
on.
man.
You know it's that way because of how it is.
You know what? We're all joking here, but gears are turning.
Yeah, I'm a little
There we
worried about
go.
how much we're encouraging him.
No, I'm very interested.
I just sit like this the whole time and just like, you know.
You know what grinds my gears?
You know what you could do a show
You know
about
what's
because you talk
weird?
about it so much? How much you love the fit of the thin hoodies from TeePublic.
Oh, I do. They're so thin.
Search for Bloody Good Horror on TeePublic and you can buy our awesome shirt. You like that? It's a plug.
Boy, I actually was researching to see, and this would be a topic. This could be a show right here. I was researching because I wanted to get their hoodies without anything on them because I just want like a bunch of blanks, but they won't. They're like proprietary hoodies. They won't sell them.
Dude,
to you.
save it for the show.
No, this is my tease. This is my preview to get people in the
Okay.
door.
Let's all just be quiet, then Eric can cut this out on his own.
I got.
Patreon.com/Bloody Good Horror if you want to hear Eric's spin-off show about thin hoodies.
Listen, I gotta
Here's
get.
your teaser.
I gotta get people in the door. Okay, Mark. Seriously, have you ever worn a thin hoodie before? It's magical.
they're, they're like hoodies, but thinner.
It's incredible. I think I'm really onto something here.
Oh man.
But I want to hear it so bad.
Joe, if it makes me happy, it's a success.
Oh my
It can't be
god, I
that
want to hear
bad.
it.
If it makes you happy.
Joe, you might be able to retire the white noise machine with this show coming out. Just run on this.
I don't even think we have to review movies anymore. I think we should just come up with ideas for Eric's solo show, and that should be our entire show.
Actually, Joe and I were actually seriously talking about reviewing old Jersey Shore episodes this weekend.
Oh yeah, for sure.
There you go.
I could get way into that.
We got ideas, you know.
Way
Oh,
into it.
man.
Jesus. Cheesy
I
effing
Lauren is
crazy.
super supportive of the solo Eric show, just so he doesn't talk about that shit to her.
Yeah.
I would actually encourage any listeners to tweet us with either the words yes or no if you would like Eric to do this solo show.
Wait, don't get that confused with the Ghost in the Shell.
Nah, just tweet
No,
them
I
all
think that's
together.
exactly the point. I think we have to. It's up to us to decide which one
Yeah.
we're talking about.
I could just review these episodes. Like I could just play the Bloody Good Horror episode and then like add commentary over the top of it. Like, you know, I don't
Just
really agree.
Redact this episode.
I don't
and
really
just
agree with
insert
what
yourself
Schnarr
over the
said
whole
there.
thing.
I just want that saved for the record. I don't agree with John. So
You know, Joe really was in their face. We really should be doing Ghost in the Shell. This is true.
Oh, also, if you ever regularly use an RSS reader, just text or tweet us the word yes or no, so we can have 3 different polls going on at the same time with no distinction between what they are.
listen, I don't need confirmation that RSS is the technology of the future, Mark. So
I do, because you did such a poor job convincing me.
it's not true. You can hear all about it on my new show.
Eric reads. There's one you can just read shit that comes up on your RSS feed.
Dude, there's a show on NPR around here. I don't know if it's I'm pretty sure it's local, where people just read the newspaper. It's on Sunday afternoon. I want to drive to the building and burn it down. It's so bad. Like, listen, just replay Wait, Don't Tell Me. Like, that's all I want to hear on the weekend, right? Like,
I could really use some
Fair.
Prairie Home Companion right now.
no, that show sucks. I just want to
What
Wait,
the
Don't Tell Me.
Fuck.
You better watch
Whoa.
out.
Show sucks.
That is fighting words.
Episode number 2 of my show. It's terrible. Just go ahead, Mark.
Eric reviews NPR shows because the only thing more boring than NPR shows is Eric reviewing NPR shows. That's not true. I love NPR. Fuck. Man, I love, man, Eric shows.
Why don't we start that exit music?
Is there more?
That's because Eric's writing show ideas on his phone.
Wait,
and not
that-
paying attention
That's
to
it
the
for
show anymore.
tweets? I just assumed there was more.
No.
No, I explicitly said there was only one tweet, and then I read it.
Only like 7 or 8 times.
I didn't hear that on my show, so yeah.
Eric's already started his own show in his head right now.
Oh, I'm taking show notes. John, what are we doing next week?
Belko Experiment.
That looks hot.
Mhm.
So excited.
Also, continued domination by Bloomhouse.
I
mean, if it does
think so,
well.
yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's a BH Tilt.
It's a
joint.
tilt.
The house that
Oh.
blummed.
Yeah, and it's
That
got
is legitimately unhelpful.
looks like it has a bunch of good. Oh god, we didn't even talk about that.
We tweeted about it or posted it on
Schnarr's.
Yeah.
Instagram.
Schnarr's just ripped Mark a new one in our business.
John
meeting.
really just like shot an arrow right through my head.
Schnarr's was
Hey,
like,
listen.
Schnarr's was like, oh, he's talking about like this specific business he was talking about, like kind of contacting. And Mark goes, oh, look, I knew somebody who worked there once. And Schnarrs looked over at him and went, that is legitimately unhelpful. Thank you. And just like turned his head back. And
The thank you was like the wax seal on the envelope. That was what really.
Because he
We
wasn't
hugged it.
really thanking you.
it
We hugged
was
it out. We hugged it out though afterward.
it
I don't want people to
was
think we.
so sharp. It was just like, it was beautiful.
Seriously, like the sharpest could cut a diamond. It was the sharpest fucking. It was sharp.
You betcha.
What's going on at bloodygoodhorror.com, Mark?
We've got new reviews every single goddamn day. We have a list of some pretty gnarly Mortal Kombat fatalities that Eric was pretty jazzed about. And yeah, we've got that stuff. And we've been, like we said, we did some planning. So we've got some ideas for some new shows and some improvements to the website. So keep an eye out for those.
Dude, that Mortal Kombat list was amazing. And that Kenshi fatality from MKX or whatever was, woo. Oh, sweet. Kenshi.
Yo, I don't know if you know this, but there's mad murder in those Mortal Kombat games.
Kenshi's my dude.
Kimchi.
Kimchi, yes, Joe. Also, don't forget, if you would like to hear every single back episode of the show, potentially back to number 1, numero uno,
Please, God,
and
don't.
and see live streaming HD video with our faces of this show every single week, don't forget to check out patreon.com/bloodygoodhorror. You can help support the show and see Joe's beautiful hair every single week.
Sometimes I wear hats.
Take the hat off, Joe. Do it.
Oh, it's a mess. It's a disgusting mess.
All right. That's going to do it, guys. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll talk to you next week.
Adios.
Please.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.